it's Jennifer with Watercolor Girlfriend. Thanks for joining me today here in my studio. Today we are going to work on a couple of really fun paintings, a couple of abstracts. They never want to stay in focus, so I can't show them to you. I barely. There you go. There. Great. So these were really fun to do because I'm talking to you guys as beginners. And if you haven't explored any of the textures and fun stuff that you can incorporate into your abstract watercolors or even your landscapes or portraits, you can use this kind of stuff anywhere. And if you haven't done that before, this is going to be a great video for you to watch. So we're going to start with, and you'll notice there's two of these, and we'll talk a little bit more as we make the video, but you're going to see us create these paintings with a number of different materials and techniques. So I'm going to show you how to tape it down and how I tape it down, give you some suggestions there. We're going to use the resist crayon or oil pastel, which I like both for different reasons, so you'll see more about that in the video. We're going to use water soluble crayon, a couple of different colors of these. We're going to use salt, another favorite, and we're going to use stencils, whatever stencils you have. You don't even need to, you can even cut out your own, no big deal. You could print something out, cut it out of paper, doesn't have to be anything extreme. We'll talk a little bit about adding text. We'll talk a little bit about making dots, which I am a big fan of dots and circles. We'll talk about the gel pen, and I'll talk a little bit about liquid watercolor and masking fluid for a little more of advanced, if you want to venture into that. I think we'll also talk about watercolor pens, markers, that kind of thing, and acrylic markers. So if that's something you want to explore, as you get more advanced or as your budget grows or however, I'll show you the ones that I have. Okay, let's dive right into it. Oh, I do want to thank everybody for being here today, enjoying the videos. Some of you have mentioned watching them while you work, so that's fun. And I hope it inspires you to also create some for yourself. And I did want to mention, I have another video about budget supplies, so that's great for a beginner. If you just want to start off with something small and move up, you can start there. All right, we'll see you at the video. I was going to start right from the beginning of how I put together the paintings and show you right from the start. So this could be for beginners, it could also be for advanced. I do all of these things on a regular basis. So you can see that I taped everything down, and you can also see I tried to use actually some of my grubbiest tape this time, because I do tend to use a lot of my tape over, and I can feel there's a piece of salt under this one. As you can see, I reuse them. I just wash them off. I'll usually keep them on this piece of plastic, and then later I'll wash these off and I'll reuse them. And you can use them 4 or 5 times. Sometimes you can push it so that it's, usable longer, but sometimes you'll get paint underneath them, which, you can frame it or cut it off or paint over it with some white paint, no big deal. Okay, I was gonna finish this one for you. I had my last piece of tape, just so you can see that I just kind of eyeball it. I don't really stress over it. After a while, you'll get pretty good at matching it up, as it's about 1/4 of an inch, all the way around on each of these. And this white tape actually does help eyeball it. When you use a darker tape or a colored tape, it's harder to see through. So now I'm actually going to do some resists first. I like to start a lot of my paintings this way. And I did draw on a texture here, a shape, and I'm gonna stick kind of with a fall theme because we're getting into that. So these are 2 leaves, and I did just sketch those on with some pencil so you could see it. but you don't really have to do that part. And I'm actually going to, since you can see it pretty dark, I'm going to erase a bunch of it so that it won't really show through any of the processes that we're doing. And like I said, you don't need to sketch this on here first, or you can. Now to do your first resist in the painting, I don't mean your first resist ever in the world, but that can be as well. You have a couple of options that I like to work with, either a white oil pastel or a white crayon. This can give you a finer point, so you can have thinner lines. But this is a cheaper crayon. I'm gonna actually consider buying a Crayola version. It kind of can jump around and not leave quite as nice of a line. The oil pastels are lovely too. When you're working on this smaller paper, you might want to stick with this and see how it goes for you, just because it's, you know, not as big or thick of lines, whatever you choose. I did also want to mention this is a hot press, which is my favorite. It's a smoother paper, and this is a cold press, so it's rougher. And a lot of people might start off with this. It's the easier one to find in stores or online, and it's more popular. A lot of people like the texture, the way it absorbs the watercolor paint. I'm more into this style, and I can't really even say why, except I just like the way the watercolor paints move around compared to on this paper. I really don't love the texture that comes through. For me, I find it distracting, and so I mostly move over here. So I'm going to do one in oil pastel and one in wax. If you look off to the side when you're doing this, you might be able to see the line so that you can tell if it created a good enough line. I don't know what to say really, because you'll tell if it's broken up and there's no wax there. Okay, we're going to do that over here with a different look, and I'm just going to freehand this one. You can see I did a design with black in it. Maybe I'll get rid of that. Okay, super. So now you have a couple, and now you can decide, do you want to use a large brush? Do you want to use a smaller brush? Do you want to use really small brushes? These are my two favorite brushes doing abstract work, so you'll see me working with these a lot. So I'll use this one over here and this one over here. And I think we'll stick with just a couple of colors actually in each. It can get a little overpowering when they're small. I mean, not necessarily. I do plenty of small ones where they are also very colorful and lots going on. So maybe we'll do this one with a lot of colors, and this one we'll do with 3 colors. We'll do this one orange, red, and brown, and this one we'll just kind of wing it. We're going to start with the watercolors first. I have kind of a crazy palette. I also have a couple of palettes over here to extend some of the colors that I've used and enjoy. So you can, you know, pile on the palettes as you go along. You can even use recycled plastic containers. Doesn't have to actually be a palette. I actually pulled mine apart and now it's stuck together with tape so that I can get the paint in the middle. You don't need to know that. Okay, we're gonna get going with this. So I like to balance it out and put the color in more than one spot usually. Not always. So you can see it's holding up fine. This one might be a little denser in the resist, but this one's not bad either. I usually only have like one orange going, so I don't have a big variety of oranges, but I'm going to use this bright one here. And I like to go over some of the other colors, if you can see that there. I like how that looks. It's called layering. So I kind of cheated there and used my other brush over here. We're going to get back to using this one. It'll give a different look. Or maybe just a slower look. So I'm just going to use one of my favorite greens here. That's a lighter green. And I'm sorry, I don't have the name of this color in front of me. It is not sap green. So there's that. Now you could just, you know, paint inside of these shapes too. That could definitely be something that's interesting. We could do that. You can also take one of the colors and dip it lightly into the and at the same time, while some things are still wet, I'm going to use some salt. If you've tried this before, you already know how this turns out, and you can just put it in one color. It doesn't have to go everywhere. And one color can be very nice as a, you know, an area that's very interesting, and other areas that are less subdued and a little more subdued and, you know, quieter. So I think we're actually going to let this dry. I actually use a fan instead of a hair dryer. I find the hair dryer is actually too powerful. You can use hot or cold, I know, on a hair dryer, but I find that it's too powerful, blows everything around, blows the paint around, and I have to stay here. And it still takes a while. So I'm gonna let it dry on its own. I have a fan right here standing by all the time, and I can go off and do other things while this is drying, and then I come back and play some more. So everything has dried, and the salt area looks pretty cool. I did do it on both of these. Going to get rid of this. It really gives you a texture you can't really get any other way. I hope you can see that real good. I think so. The salt does get everywhere. I like to vacuum it all up at the end. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more color with my 2 brushes. I'll try a different green in here. Might have been a little more than I like, but it's nice with the leaf, right? Sometimes you have to sit and let your painting sit for a little bit while you think about things, while it dries, and you come back and see what direction you want to take it. Adding paint, you can even kind of remove it like I showed you there a minute ago with the blotting. Lots of options. Now over here, I do have this white area, but I want to leave some of it white. I'm going to add some more orange. I'm going to add to the color that's there as well. See, it's kind of lighter there. It's nice. It doesn't have to be the same tone everywhere. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be subtle. You can go over the other colors to give a layered look. I hope you can tell from that the red that I have here and the orange that I have here, and then layering it. It creates a completely different color, a different effect. It's lovely. And sometimes you just have to try things. And sometimes you love it, and sometimes you hate it. And sometimes you take that into the next painting and, oh, remember when I did that? I loved how that turned out. I do want some more red in here. A little more pink over here. And if it distracts you to have color here on the tape, you can just, wipe a little bit as you go. It's not going to get it entirely, but it's all right. Now, as it's still wet, I'm going to grab some of my water-soluble crayons. I like to tie in the colors, but you certainly don't have to. I like to dip it in water, so it kind of gives it a melting like appearance. I'll just grab the orange. If you like, you can also add a little more color here and move it around with your maybe some swirls, and give that a different texture as well. If you don't like it, you can come back in and you're enjoying. It's two totally different experiences, right? I'm going to let these dry again with my trusty fan, and we'll be back. Great, everything has dried, and it's still a little, the paper is still feeling a little damp. You can see that it's a little bit warped still, but that'll calm itself down over time. I wanted to introduce some stencils next. So you can get one like this that has a lot of different stencils on it, and grab your favorite area. And I like to use a coordinating watercolor pencil. These are relatively inexpensive. You can buy them usually individually. And I like to let it kind of bleed off the edge of the paper. See how it doesn't quite, and you can add a little more after you take it off if you like. And if you brush it, see, you'll notice that it kind of starts to bleed. You could try a little brush, or you can just leave it. You can also try using a little bit of water to pick it up if you don't like it there, and blot it. There, nice and white again. Now, if you would like, you can also add this in another area, which can help kind of tie in what you have going on. Kind of balances things out. Over here, I'm going to use a slightly different stencil and a different color. So I have red, and then that's kind of the only color that I have that matches, so I'm going to use that. And you can make it real, give it full coverage, or give it kind of a I don't know how to call it, where you don't color it in so much, so it gives you kind of a different kind of a surface. There we go. Use a little brush to get that out of there, and then you don't have that bleeding effect. You can add that in other places. I like that it gives some other form of texture. Now you can use a little water too and spread that around. That can add a nice effect as well. You can do that with these as well if you wanted. Now I'm a big fan of adding another layer, and I'm going to add some dots. I want to use the red that I've been using. Can add a little bit more over here too to tie that feel in. If you need a little more water. I'm actually going to do it on this one too with a different color. I'm going to do some pink. Yeah, super. We're gonna let that dry again. Actually, no. I'm gonna add a little bit more orange. So now I think this tape might be bleeding a little bit. Now I could also add a little more green in here, which I think would look nice. Oh, wrong green. That might give a nice contrast too. Let's see. Maybe I'll get rid of some of it. And I'm not real big on this straight line here, so I'll get rid of that. There we go. That's better. Super. Let's let this dry and come back. I think next we'll use the gel pen. Now, once you get to this point, I like to add some more interest with a gel pen. You can also expand on your supplies and move into like an acrylic marker, or you can try some like shimmery paints. These can be a little pricey though, so make note of that. So we're going to add some gel pen. Now I'm going to leave this one the way it is, just keeping the gel pen on this one, and I really like how that looks. It's very contrasty. Now I mentioned already this different paper, the cold press or the rough. You can see, I hope you can see that, the different texture that it gives you, and you might really love that. You can see how maybe I can even zoom in here for you. And you can see how the texture of the paper is picked up with the oil pastel and some of the paint, where this one is very smooth, and I just find that more appealing. You got a more coverage of the oil pastel, and it's more of a, you know, smoother surface. This has a lot more going on. Something else you could also, if you want to get more advanced, I want to mention a few other things that you can add on to your paintings. You can add text, where you just cut out from, you know, pages. Maybe you have some old books that aren't of any interest. Sometimes you can find them at the library where they're a couple of cents, and you can cut those out and glue those down. And if it works into your budget, you can explore liquid watercolors. These are really fun. They're very vibrant and you can add them in. And this is the pink, so then you could add that on top of that and that would make it even bolder and brighter. The masking fluid can be really fun to add in other resist marks on your painting. You can do it from the beginning when it's white, or you can do it over the color and then paint again over that, and it can create some interesting resists where then you remove it and the other paint below it is visible. And we talked about the water soluble crayons, and just briefly I mentioned the acrylic markers. You can expand into some of these, and they also make a watercolor marker as well. This one has like a fine tip and a wide tip, so you can really start to expand on what you're learning from the beginning, you know, as your budget grows or your interests. I hope you enjoyed watching this demonstration today. I'm going to remove the tape. I think I like the way it's turned out. You could certainly add in more. This one's a little busier, a little brighter. It's two totally different looks. So I hope you had fun watching that. Where do I? These are all. So there's some of the bleed that I talked about, which you could cover with some white acrylic paint, or you could trim it off, or you could cover it with let's see if I could find, you can just get a mat and cover that easily. You'll never even notice. But the rest of them look very nice. Turned out very well. And if you prefer, you can turn them. Maybe you like them in a different way. But you can see the leaf pattern still showed up here. This maybe is a little more Christmassy, if sort of a feel. And this is a nice fall version. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and it encourages you to get out and do some painting for yourself. Have a nice day.